helping your intermediate ballet students pick the right variation for a performance opportunity. Maybe they want to do like a school talent show, maybe they want to do a competition. It can be hard to help them find the right variation at that level. Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm the Geeky Ballerina, and today I am going to share 10 go-to variations that work really well for intermediate students. I love teaching intermediate students partly because they are kind of tricky. They know a lot, but they don't quite know what they don't know yet. They are ambitious. They're a little bit hard to rein in, right? Like there's a lot of really cool things that we're balancing here. We want to keep the enthusiasm and the passion and the ambition. These are all great things. And we also want to make sure we don't develop bad habits. So anytime I'm looking at a variation for an intermediate student, I do ask 3 questions. The first one is, does this student already know most of these steps? And are they pretty good, quite good at the ones they know? It's almost impossible to find a variation for an intermediate student that doesn't have something new in it. You're gonna end up teaching something a little bit ahead of schedule. But in general, most of the steps should be well known. And then of course, we can always modify if we need to. Speaking of modifications, the second question that I ask is, are the modifications that I am going to want to make organic? If I'm doing a variation that has Italian fouettes in it and we are not ready for that, and I decide to put in chaînés instead, it kind of doesn't connect. And very often we are performing these variations for an audience that knows them. I try to keep modifications that are fairly close to the original step. If the variation had piqués en manège and my student wasn't ready to go in a circle that way, we could do piqués along the diagonal. Or if we had a lot of piqués along a diagonal, we could do 1 piqué and 3 soutenus. Something that is close to the original, but simplified, tends to work better just for the sake of the artistic whole. And then the third question I ask is this an age-appropriate theme for this student? When we're doing a classical ballet variation or romantic, I'm kind of mushing those two together, we don't have to worry about age-appropriate movement. We don't have to worry about age-appropriate costuming. That's nice. I really like that. But I do think it's worth questioning the theme. It's super common for professional dancers to portray a younger character. Juliet, Lise from Female Garde, they'll do it with Clara if you have an adult playing Clara. Super common to act down, right? Act younger. But it's not as effective to have people act older. So if you have like a 13-year-old and she is a young 13-year-old, I don't mean chronologically, I mean just, some people mature early, some people mature a little bit later, and all of that is fine. But if you are working with a 13-year-old who has the vocabulary, the technical expertise on par with being a 13-year-old, but she's emotionally a little bit less mature, I don't think we're doing her any favors by pushing her into something like Nikia's Death. It's a gorgeous variation, but it's a mature theme. This is just personal opinion. Take it or leave it. But I don't think it does any good for the dancer as a person to push them to a maturity level they aren't emotionally and cognitively ready for. But let's get into the list. This is the reason you're here, right? A great option for intermediate dancers is Swanhilde from Coppelia. The Swanhilde variations are fun and they are lighthearted. If you're nervous about the turns, because there are opportunities to do lots of turns, they're easily simplified. Swanhilde is a great intermediate option. Another good variation is Harlequinade. It's, again, super cute. There's lots of chances for acting. Yep, that diagonal with the pirouettes that tend or sometimes go into the rond de jambe, into the arabesque, that is tricky. And if your dancer's not ready for that, you can take it out super easily. It's fun. it's playful. Again, all the things that I liked about Swanhilda, but a different variation. And if you have someone who you think would be great for Harlequinade and they're kind of like, is it going to be challenging enough? That headpiece alone, like an off-centered headpiece, learning how to dance with that is a challenge that may not be available in other performance opportunities. The third one on my list is La Femelle Gardée. I love this variation because who doesn't want to dance the character who is supposed to be doing her chores, but whoops, is dancing instead? It's really easy to relate with. It's not overly flashy, but a lot of those connecting steps are trickier than people give them credit for. So you can work on finessing the details. It's a great way, if you have a dancer who is kind of easily distracted by the tricks, this can be a great opportunity to introduce to them the importance and the value of refining your connecting steps. Or you can simplify them. We've talked about dancers who are a little bit on the younger end of their age. What if you have a dancer who is mature for their age? La Sylphide can be a fabulous variation for these dancers because it requires so much attention to detail, so much precision, and calm confidence. It can be very, very difficult to do. It looks so easy. It's so lovely. This is also a really good variation if you have a dancer who has gorgeous port-de-bras and you really want to show that off, but they don't have like the flashier steps. La Sylphide is a really good one. In general, I stay away from Paquita for intermediate dancers, but there is one variation from Paquita that I think works really well. It goes by a few different names, so when you Google it, you can look for La Camargo or harp variation. Same thing will come up. The reason that I like this one for intermediate dancers is because there are lots of opportunities to play with musicality and to make those artistic decisions. So when I'm working with a dancer on this variation, we will watch several versions and I will ask the dancer to notice, how is the musical timing different? What do they think of those choices? What choices do they want to make? It's a really fun one to get into for those reasons. It also is a good one for a dancer who is either naturally very good at that regal carriage and you want to show it off, or a dancer who really likes to shrink away and you want to challenge them to bring that regal carriage out. The sixth variation that I often go to for intermediate dancers is Princess Florine from Sleeping Beauty. I get a little bit of pushback from them because when they watch the YAGP videos, they see the pre-competitive kids doing Princess Florine. It's very, very popular among that age group. And if that is their concern, I will happily have that conversation with them. Yes, a lot of little kids do Princess Florine. A lot of them do it as a like whack a leg situation. Whereas when I work on this with more intermediate dancers, there are a lot of opportunities to practice fluid transitions within this variation that often get overlooked. I also really like the Diamond Fairy from Sleeping Beauty for intermediate dancers. This one doesn't get done as often, and it tends to align with intermediate vocabulary and intermediate skills really well. Now we're getting into the more advanced end of the intermediate spectrum. I like the third variation in the pas de trois from Swan Lake. This is not Jump Girl. And sometimes when you do a search, you'll see it as variation 2 because it is the second girl variation. The second actual variation in the pas de trois is the male. So sometimes it comes up as the Swan Lake pas de trois variation 3. Sometimes it comes up as variation 2, just heads up. I find it is a little bit easier for intermediate students to do on point, even though it does have hops on point, which you can easily switch out for something else. Another intermediate advanced variation is Satinella. It's gorgeous. It's fantastic. You already know about it. It has great challenges for point work, and it also can be simplified, especially those turns at the end. Suggestion 10 on my list is Graduation Ball. This one also often gets done by slightly younger dancers, and it is very tempting to turn this again into a whack-a-leg because it's got those big kicks in it. And frankly, if your grand pas stops at 90 degrees, variation ball is not for you. You do not currently have the physicality to do that. But if you have a flexible dancer who can do it, then you get to work on doing it extremely well. It's easy to get the leg up. It's actually harder to get it down. I know gravity is helping you, but can you get it down in the way that you choose to bring it down? There are also a lot of technical details in graduation ball that get skipped because people are so busy focusing on the big flashy steps. They don't take the time to notice those details. Again, this is an opportunity to work on the magic in between the steps. Those transitions are so key. And graduation ball is fun and it is playful and you have a lot of opportunities to practice acting. And it is really hard to pull off that fall at the end where it looks like a real fall, but isn't. That is really hard to do. It's a fun challenge. Like I said, it can be really hard to find a variation that suits your intermediate dancers. But I do think it's worth it because when dancers get to experience these beautiful canonized ballet variations, it helps them see their future as a ballet dancer. It helps them see the success that they can have. And that can be a very, very motivating experience. So you get the benefit of concentrated work on the technique and the variation, but I actually think that the biggest payoff is the change in the mindset that students can have. But again, it's hard, and it's hard to keep track of which variation goes with which level. So if you want a list, I actually, in my full point curriculum that I have on my website, I include a list at the end where I break down many, not all, because that's impossible, but many of the established repertory variations. And I have them split into beginning, point, intermediate, and advanced. And then I also have a separate section of variations that are particularly good for your jumpers. There are not as many of those. But I'm curious, what are your go-to variations for your intermediate students? Leave a comment below and let's just start learning from each other. Like, this is my favorite part of this channel, is learning. As always, I hope you have a really great class.